right, if your book has been almost started or almost finished for longer than you care to admit, this hour is going to change that. Hello and good morning, everyone. We are going to go ahead and get started so that we can steward this hour well. I have some amazing things planned for you, and I want to mention that there is a booklet that you should have been emailed. It is, there we go, 2026, the year your book gets written. It's a workbook. You should have gotten the link in the email. So go ahead and be getting that. If you don't have the workbook, don't have it pulled up, literally just a pen and paper would be great. And we are going to go ahead and get started. All right, if your book has been almost started or almost finished for longer than you care to admit, this hour is going to change that. I'm so glad you're here because if you're here, it's because your book matters. Not just as a creative project, but a calling, a message, something you are supposed to steward well. So let's set the intention this morning of truly planning out our book so that it gets done and published in 2026. Now, let's talk about the real reason people don't actually get their book finished. Because the truth is, it has nothing to do with talent. It's not about being talented enough or being a good enough writer. They often struggle with getting it done because the timeline is fuzzy. And usually that looks like, I don't know what to do next. Because if we know what to do next, we can then just execute that. And so that's what we're going to work on today, is we're going to take our book away from living out in someday land and bring it into, here is the exact timeline that we have. And it doesn't matter if this is a book that you're just starting to formulate the ideas around and you really are beginning to think, okay, I've got to write this, or if this is something you've been working on for 11 years. It does not matter. This is going to be the year that it gets done. And we're going to do that by planning it out. This session is not inspiration. This is not about a mindset shift. I have plenty of those sessions. So if that's what you need, stick around, stick in my community. We will get you there. Today is practical. The worksheet is practical. There is literally a calendar, there are dates, and we are going to mark it out. And this is a working session. It is intended for my writers inside Christian Writers Arise Academy, and I'm just opening the doors to others to come and join because I know if you can plan your book, you will get it written. And I'm more interested about getting the books God has called people to write out than I am about hiding things behind a paywall inside Christian Writers Arise. So I want us to really do some work today, okay? Thank you all so much for being here this morning. I'm looking around my Zoom room and I see all of you, and I actually know everyone here. You've been in my circle, or you actually are members of the Academy. And so I know personally what books you are stewarding and a little bit about where you are in the process, but we're going to go through that. We're going to set smart, realistic launch dates, not aspirational, but a doable one. Then we're going to reverse engineer those major milestones that have to happen before that date so that we can reach that date. We're then going to break it down into manageable steps so that it doesn't feel heavy. It feels like, okay, I just need to do this next thing. And then you're going to walk out knowing exactly what your next step is. Not all the steps at once, just I need to do this next thing. So let's begin with that workbook or pen and paper. I am going to drop the link here in the chat for the workbook. And if you're watching this on a replay, The show notes will have the link in the show notes or in the email. So grab the workbook, grab some pen and paper. Personally, because I'm going to be doing this with y'all, I have all different colors of pen, and I use erasable pens with different colors because things change. And even though we set our best plans, things were going to happen in the middle. And so we need to be able to adjust. So I tend to always either write in pencil or an erasable pen so that when plans change, I can transition. Because as we know, it's the Lord who actually orders our steps, as he tells us in Proverbs 16:9. But he does expect us to steward our time well and to plan what it is he's calling us to do while allowing him to make changes as we walk through. All right, so let's look at the very last page of the workbook. It's a calendar, okay? Very simple, all 12 months of 2026, but don't forget about the fact that you've still got about 2 weeks left in December if you're watching this as I'm recording it. Again, if you're watching this later and it's middle of 2026, just get you a calendar that goes out at least 12 months and you can apply all of these same steps to that. And we're going to start with the biggest thing that's going to help us set everything else up, and that is a launch date. And I know it might feel scary for you to say, okay, I can't commit to a launch date because I don't even know how long it's going to take me to write. I don't know if I even have an idea for the outline yet. Don't worry about all that. It will come, I promise you. I've helped too many authors get their books done to have any concerns about the fact that it is going to come. And we're not going to choose some fantasy date. We're going to choose a wise date. So here are your rules. If you're drafting consistently, or you're somewhere in the middle of that process, you need to set a launch date that's at least 9 months out, possibly even 11. If you have an actual manuscript, you can set it closer to 8 to 9. If you don't even have a draft yet, add 3 more months. So you might be looking at on into 2027, the early part of 2027. That's fine, okay? Here's the other thing. Avoid major holidays. But those holidays could be personal holidays as well. So for example, next May, I have a daughter graduating high school. May is going to be out of the question. I can't have a book launch in May, right? We want to avoid Christmas. You want to avoid Black Friday. It may sound like a great idea to have a book launch right before Black Friday so people on Black Friday can buy your book. Sales don't actually work out that way though, because you need a launch, you need visibility, and there's so much in your email box during Black Friday, your launch messages are going to get lost. So if you pick some weird random Tuesday in the middle of an obscure month that nothing's happening, that's actually the best. So September is often a very popular month for that very reason. September is actually going to be the date that I pick for my upcoming book that I'm working through this same process with you. All right. So we're going to avoid your birthday. We're going to avoid seasons where your life gets full. And I want you to take a look at the calendar right now. I'm going to even pause, take a drink of coffee, mark my own date, and I want you to live right now mark a date. You're committing to this as strong as it is written in pencil, okay? Which means, yes, God can change it, but we're committing at least for the next hour. And then after you physically write it down, I want you to drop it in the comments as well. And I am going to do the same. So again, if you just have an idea, you don't really have a formulated draft going yet, I want you to be looking at least that out. Okay, so Therese is one of my authors. We might not talk about this because it'll get Therese and I both upset, but a co-author who has passed away, she's referring to his birthday. That would be an amazing choice. We've already had said August. That was what the three of us had already agreed to. That would be incredible. And so let's just do it. And then if God changes it, God changes it. Okay, so Sherry, February 22nd, because you were rocking along. You've been doing your outline, you've been drafting, correct, Sherry? You've been rocking and rolling and moving, right? September 15th, my birthday. Yay! Oh, of 2027. Even better. That gives you some breathing room. That is beautiful. Perfect, perfect. July 1st, Amanda. Okay, perfect. Again, be cognizant that July 1st date means that you should already have a pretty full first draft going, like you would be in the editing process. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. Nicole, you and I know God's given us September 22nd as a date for you. We've already discussed that. We thought it would be 25. It wasn't, but 26 is going to be that date. So we already know that He has given us that date. And yes, Amanda, if your first draft is complete, July 1st is very, very doable. Awesome. Awesome. Okay, guys, let's go on to the next timeline because y'all have done this so good. So I want to normalize this timeline for you, this idea of it taking 12 to 15 months. Writing a book is not intended to be that super fast timeline that you see on Facebook ads these days, where it's like, write your book in a weekend and publish with AI in 30 days. Can that happen? Like, are those pie in the sky things that they're lying to you about in the ads? No, not at all. AI can literally write you a book in a weekend. Is that going to be the same quality of book that God is asking us to steward? No, not anywhere close. So it always depends on the purpose behind your book. If you're trying to put something out to check a box so that when a podcast host asks if you have a book, you can say, yeah, you have one, but you don't really want them to go grab it, then yes, use AI, get it done in 30 days, put it out there, no problem. But if this is a book God is calling you to steward, which that's you, then you don't want to do that. You want to take the time. So let's even compare that to what a traditionally published timeline might look like. Okay. So for Facing the Fire, which is a book Rose and Pearl Publishing just put out, we had our first conversation around that book in July of 2024. Its launch date was September 5th, 2025. Notice that's a 14-month timeline from our first conversation to when we actually got it done. And it was very doable. There were times when it felt relaxed, even. Now, compare that to my traditionally published statistics textbook. We had our first conversation about what will be our fourth edition in June of this year. The go to the press time is fall 27. Y'all, this is a fourth edition. This is one that's already out there selling 7 figures a year. All we're doing is refreshing exercises and examples. And the timeline is 18 to 24 months out for this traditional publisher. So even though it might seem like 15 months is a long time, in comparison to those that truly set the standard in the industry, you're still doing it really fast. But you don't have the holdups of teams of editors and teams of designers keeping the process from moving forward. You will be the contractor making sure that that process is moving forward well. So you can get it done in a weekend. That's not what God is calling us to do. It can take 2 years, but God is not calling us to do that either. All right, so you've locked in your launch dates. You have them already in the comments, and I love that. So now we're going to transition to step 2. This is where we move from talking about where we're going to how we're going to get there. We now know where we're going. We have our launch date. In the Christian Writers Arise Academy, we walk through 5 phases of writing. So let me introduce them to you now because these are going to match the big milestones that we're going to put in next. And for some of you, like Amanda in the comments has said, it took her 6 months to write her first draft and she's already there. Some of these dates that we'll be talking about, you might have in the past. You might have already done that. So the first part, it's arise, the word ARISE. The first A is assignment. You have to know what you're writing, who you're writing it for, and what you want the outcome to be. So, for example, Therese writes true crime. She's an investigative journalist. She writes true crime. She could write this in a whole bunch of different ways. She could write it as a memoir of her experience about a case. She could write it as a personal development. How do you research as a journalist? Some investigative story, and here's a case study. She could write it as a true crime book, which is a genre in and of itself. She could write it as a fiction story that's based on a true crime. So notice there's a whole bunch of different ways to do the same thing. So you have to pick who it's for and what you're wanting to do. Then, once you have that clear, that might only take you like a day, a week, a couple of weeks. Okay. You're then going to write your outline. Okay. You're going to lay out exactly what you're going to do for each chapter. Then you're going to move into R. R is your rough draft, where you're actually laying out each of the elements that you've already decided on in your chapters. You're going to sprint to the finish line. You want to get your rough draft written as quickly as possible. Then we're going to move to I, which is improvement. I call this the editing dance because you're going to self-edit it until you think it's perfect. Then you're going to send it to a professional editor, and they're going to tell you that it is not indeed perfect. And they're going to send you back a whole bunch of things to change. And then you're going to change those until you think it is once again perfect. And then you're going to send it back to your professional editor, and they're going to tell you, indeed, it is still not perfect. And you're going to do that at least 3 times, a developmental edit, a line edit, and a proofread. And in the middle of all of that, you're also going to be asking beta readers to read it, and they are going to also tell you, hey, the guy in chapter 5 that had a broken leg, it suddenly wasn't broken anymore in chapter 7. Like, what happened? So they're going to tell you that indeed your book is not perfect. And that's a good thing. All of that is good things because then it gives you ways to continue to improve it. So that is I. Now, the rough draft is going to take you 9 to 12 weeks, again, because we're trying to rush to finish it. I know that sounds crazy, but the rough draft needs to be really messy. And the reason is because you can edit stuff on the page. You cannot edit a blank document. So it doesn't matter what it says. It just needs to be there. So that's why I tell you to rush, because if you rush, it kind of automatically turns off that inner critic that we talk about in our right method. You've got to ignore the inner critic. And by rushing, she kind of doesn't have time to catch up with you. We're going to improve it. It's not going to stay that rushed version. Okay, so don't worry about that. But once we get that done, again, that's going to take maybe even 3 months there. Improving it, that editing, that's going back and forth. It's an editing dance. So there's times when you're waiting on the editor and times when you're editing. That's again going to take 3 months. The showcase, this is the S in Arise. It's where all of the work that takes the book from, hold on, I've got examples, from this manuscript to this book. This is the S. How do I get from here to here? So it's your cover designer. It's your interior formatting. It's the blurb on the back. It's the metadata. And don't worry, you don't need to know what metadata is yet. You will get there. But all of those things that truly showcase the work and make people lean in and say, yes, this is something that I want. The good news is showcasing is something that you can overlap with the I and the E so that when there are gaps, so I'm waiting on the editor, I'm waiting on this, I'm waiting on that, then you can actually do some of these other things that are needed in that S. Then E is exposure. So people can't buy your book if they don't know it exists. So you need a plan to get it out there and to get it visible so that people know your book exists. So that's the E in the ARISE formula. And again, that's going to take a month or two. So if you're adding up all of those different pieces, that's where that 12 months comes into play. Okay? Is adding in all of those. So we're going to reverse engineer the process using what I call the big rocks method. So have you ever seen that video where the person takes a big glass jar and they put sand in the bottom and then they put pebbles, then they put bigger rocks and then they put big rocks and they put water, and pretty soon the whole thing's overflowing. And then they do it the opposite way where they put the big rocks in first, then they put in smaller rocks, and then they put in pebbles, and then they put in sand, and they put in water. And there's room for so much more stuff because they put the big rocks in first. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to put the big rocks in first, remembering for some of you, these rocks have already been put in and finalized. You already have your outline, or you already have your first draft. So backdate those if you need to. So the first thing we're going to do is look at your launch date, count backwards about 6 months. That's when your first full draft needs to be done. So that's why I told Amanda, she said, my first draft is done. July 1st worked perfect for her because that's a little more than 6 months from when she wants to launch. So again, that's why I have the calendar there so you can literally count. 1, 2. So for me, that puts March. Because like Nicole, like several of you, I have a September launch date. Okay, now we need to edit. The editing needs to then be done by 3 to 4 months before that launch date. So take your launch date, back up 3 months. So for me, that would be June. I'm going to put a mark there that's when my editing needs to be done. Because from that first draft complete to editing being done, that's where I'm going to be working with my professional editor to work on the book. All right, so now we're going to go into that next big rock, that formatting. So your cover design being finalized, your interior formatting being done, that back blurb being written. That really needs to all be done 2 months before the launch date. So for me, that's putting me in July. So you see, I've got my marks for each of those. Now between your launch date and that mark that you just put on there for your interior formatting being done, that is your marketing window pre-launch. Launch is literally, it's birthed, it's in the world, people can buy it. That's what the launch means. And then launch should continue a minimum of 30 days after that launch date. So you're going to have a 3-month minimum window there, starting with when your cover design, interior formatting, all of that's done, going through a month to 2 months out afterward. And there's a lot of things we're going to be doing in that time. We're going to put those littler rocks in just a second. Okay, so if you look at this, you'll notice that about every other month or so, there's a big thing. Doesn't that make it feel so much more doable? You're like, oh, I can breathe. Like, this isn't something that I have to get done tomorrow. Like, all I have to do right now is this thing. And suddenly you should be feeling a lot more relaxed in terms of, oh, yeah, this actually is a doable thing that I can do. Okay, so that's what I'm wanting you to feel right now is like, okay, yes, yes, absolutely, I can do this. All right. Now, I want us to then move to these smaller rocks because this is where the momentum starts coming in. If you know the next teeny tiny little thing that you have to do, then it feels like, oh, I can do that. It's when you feel like I've got to climb a mountain that you decide, well, maybe I can just stay at the bottom of the mountain. Maybe not climbing that mountain is okay. But if all I have to do is walk this 10 feet, yeah, I can walk that 10 feet. If all I have to do is climb these 3 steps, well, yeah, I can climb those 3 steps. And then once you get there, then you say, oh, I just need to go over this small little ramp. Okay, well, I can do that. Again, you're never looking at the big mountain you're climbing, but suddenly the final book's in your hand and you're like, I climbed a mountain. Oh my gosh, this is incredible. So that's what we're doing is we're just adding in the tiniest steps so that every step just feels like something very simple and easy to do. And then pretty soon you've just done them all. All right, so here are the small rocks. And again, in your workbook, I have them all laid out for you so that you can literally just check them off as you keep going through. So one of the things that you need to do, probably about 4 to 6 months out, it's a good opportunity to do this while your editor's got your book and so you can't actually be writing, is hire your cover designer. Decide how you're going to format. Unless you're a graphic artist or like your mother or husband or sister or somebody is a graphic artist, I would not do your book cover yourself. I would definitely hire that out. I often will make mock-ups on Canva. Sometimes they're really, really good. I have kept them a few times. But usually I then send that to my cover designer and they send me something completely, completely different. So for example, I'm going to go back to this Facing the Fire book just because it's one that's most recently launched. I had a mock-up that was a guy in full fire gear kneeling in front of flames about to go in a house because that's how the story began. He went into a house that was fully engulfed. What ended up happening, this isn't a spoiler, we tell you this in the preface on page 1, he lost his whole face. It literally melted off because his helmet got knocked off in the fire. So I had this mock-up. I used that mock-up for 8 months as I was promoting the book. And my cover designer gave me a mock-up that looks similar. And then what is typical for cover designers is they'll give you a couple of options and say, what about this? What about this? What about this? What do you like and not like about different ones? And in doing so, he gave us one that was so shocking. Everybody was like, just, we didn't know if we liked it or hated it. It just stops you in your tracks. And we decided that was exactly what we wanted. We wanted it to be people to be stopped in their tracks. And it's this where his face is literally gone. We would not have come up on that with that on our own. So sometimes hiring the cover designer is to find something so unique, it will stop people in their tracks. So again, right after you have your first draft finished, and now it's moving into that editing, give yourself a few weeks and then put cover design right there because that's something you can do while your editor has your book. Right before that big rock, put in hire professional editor because you don't want to be handing this to somebody who is an English teacher for a little while. You need some, they might be an amazing editor, but you want someone who actually edits books to edit your book. And you need to have them hired right before your final draft is done. Big hint, it'll actually force you to get it finished too, because you now signed a contract with them to get this done. So that's just a little extra pro tip there. Something else that you can do is write your back cover copy. Here is where you can let AI shine. You can feed it information about your book and ask it to come up with different versions. I have some amazing prompts for how to have AI write an amazing back cover copy. I always edit it after it gives it to me, but it's a good place to start. And that is a good use of AI, is to help you with some of these back end tasks. All right. Again, these are things going in that middle window between first draft and edited draft. You're also going to be lining up beta readers. Beta readers should probably be reading your book about the same time your editor's reading it for the first time, because you want time to fix anything they tell you before it goes to line editing. So again, you're going to put them, pick a week right in there to be sending that really pretty draft that your editor's then going to come back and tell you isn't as pretty as you thought it was. That's the draft that goes to your beta readers. And then in that final window between when you have your manuscript and it's going into formatting before the launch, that window right there, that's when you're going to be creating your media kit, your social content, email sequences. Okay, and Therese has a great question, and I'm going to get to that in just a second. Now, one of the things that I would recommend, it's how I prefer to work, is when you hire a cover designer, see if they will provide you with a lot of those images as well. So mock-ups of the book, social media graphics, variations on the book cover. So like for the ebook, for an audio book, if you want to do that, all of those variations. When I buy a package from a cover designer, I include all of those things in the package. So that way I get everything I need to market the book, not just a cover. So Therese asked, who is a beta reader? Is that going to be friends or family? This is a great question, so let me answer that. A beta reader is going to be someone who loves your genre, who is willing to give you constructive feedback, and feedback that actually will move your project forward. And you don't need many, 4 or 5 tops, because you don't want to end up with so much that it's starting to contradict itself. And then you're going to be looking for patterns in the feedback. If one person says it's terrible, but everybody else loves it, ignore that it's terrible. If everybody says it's terrible and one person loves it, you might have to ignore the loves it one and really look at what they were telling you to change for the other ones. So you're looking for patterns, not paying attention to every single thing that everybody says. So you need people who will be honest with you. So for me, my mom actually is an amazing beta reader, and she's very honest and can tell me exactly what needs to be changed. So I use her all the time. But if my mother had not been a librarian and a reader and knows how to edit and that kind of thing, she would be a terrible choice, because she would pat me on my head and be like, I'm so proud of you, my precious girl. This book is amazing. So that would be a terrible beta reader. So again, it really depends on who will give you that honest feedback and tell you what they really think, and where there really are some great parts and where there's some parts that need work. But I would really focus on people who understand the genre in and of itself. So if you're writing historical fiction, you don't want to send it to people who write best-selling developmental books, because that's just so different. They might not be able to give you good feedback on that genre. Okay, great question. So during that middle block, that would be a good time to also begin reaching out to early influencers and podcasts, because podcasts usually film, especially the top tier ones, 4 to 6 months out before they're actually released. And so you want to make sure that you are signing up with these people and getting them interested in a time where, when it's released, is right after your launch. You want there to be a bunch of podcasts where you're talking about your book releasing after your book launches. So you're going to need to be recording them several months in advance, which means you're probably going to be sending these podcast hosts beta versions of your manuscript. So maybe the cleaned up version after you've gotten back the developmental edits, but before it goes to line editing. And just a simple note to them that that's the version they have. They understand. They know the process of writing a book. So they'll get it. They're not going to be mad if you have a spelling error here or a word missing there. As long as you're upfront with them about what stage in the process that the book is at. So, great question, Shanice. How do you find the podcast? Literally go find the interesting ones on Apple. And I have a actual how to book podcasts guide that I will send all of you out. Since Shanice, you asked about that, I'll attach it to the email with the replay for everybody who was live on the call today. Okay, now let's really get into some of these next small rocks. You've got your cover designer. You know when you're going to be doing the interior stuff. You've got beta readers. You're working on your launch. You're starting to put in those smaller rocks. And this is usually the moment when you're starting to see everything that people start realizing, oh my gosh, publishing a book's a whole lot more than just writing it. Or I don't know how to do any of those things but the rough draft. And that's fine. That's normal, especially if this is your first book. That's what everybody feels like. Nobody knows how to do this until they've done it that first time. So this isn't weakness for you to be feeling that way. That's actually wisdom. And that's the entire reason I created the Christian Writers Arise Academy, is to give authors that space to move the books forward. And in fact, half of the people in my academy have already written or published at least one book. So it's not just for brand new authors. It's for people who know that they need to steward that well. And again, there's several of my academy members here on the call this morning, so they can tell you it's about stewarding it well and knowing you need that support of other writers and a publisher who can help walk you through the process. It's not about, well, I don't know what to do, so I better find someone to do it for me. It's about being wise with what you're stewarding and knowing that this is a very big deal and it needs to be done well. So at this point, what I want you to do is identify that one next step. Because again, we're going to remove the idea of the mountain from our brains. We're not climbing a mountain. We're taking one step. Okay? Because people don't get stuck because they don't know how to do everything. You get stuck because you don't know what to do next. If I just tell you the very one next thing you need to do, and you do that, and then I tell you the next thing you need to do, and you do that, that's all you need. You just need to know what to do next. You don't even have to have the big plan. But guess what? You now have a big plan sitting right there in front of you. So, momentum is going to come from the clarity about the whole project. And that clarity is going to come from knowing your next right step, not from knowing the whole plan. So I'm going to give you 5 options of what your next step needs to be. And as I tell you, I want you to figure out which one you're at. And then I want you to put in the comments what your next step is. Which one of these feels most like you, okay? So number 1, you're at the point where everything's still a little fuzzy. And you're not sure who this book is for or what it's meant to do. You just know you're supposed to be writing it. God's given you clear direction. You're supposed to be writing this, but there's still some fuzziness. So you need to be deciding who this book serves, what problem it addresses, and what transformation the reader needs to experience. You're in that assignment zone. So your next right step is creating that vision. And if that's you, again, drop that in the comments and I will send you a training specifically around that. So the second one is you've decided that. You know what the book's about. You have a pretty clear idea around what you're wanting to do. You've even started laying out an outline, but that outline is still really rough and doesn't feel real clear. Then that's your next step, is writing that outline with intentionality to move the reader from start to finish. So your step would be writing that outline. All right, so then the third option would be if you feel like, well, you know what, I've already got an outline, I have a structure, I kind of know what's going to be happening, but I don't have a full draft. Well, then yours is easy. You just have to get that full draft. You just need to write. So that is the one that you are on. So I know Amanda is at the I've got a draft, but I don't know how to walk through the publishing process. So I need to know, how do I find this editor? How do I find a cover designer? What is metadata? You mentioned I didn't need to know what that is yet, but now I'm at the point where I need to know the editing. So yeah, Emmy is also at this point where it's like, okay, I need to know what comes next after I have that first draft. So you are on option 4. You are in that showcase mode where you're moving into improvements and showcasing, and those two tend to overlap in terms of timeline. So you need to move into the editing and the focus around all of the refinements of that. Okay? So your next right step is starting the actual publishing process, starting with an editor and a cover designer. And then lastly, if everything's drafted, but you aren't sure yet how it will fit into your business, your speaking, your messaging, your all of your authority, your ministry, you need the strategy. And so that is something else that you might be looking at is, all right, now that I've got this draft, how do I infuse it with strategy? So that may be another decision. And you can do that at the beginning in the writing process. You can also come back after you have that full draft and add in those strategy around moving people forward in your pipeline so that they can truly get the transformation that God has called you to serve others. All right, so I have gotten some amazing feedback. First draft will be finished this week. First draft is already done. Working on the first draft. I need vision. I need vision. I need vision. Excellent. Excellent. So what I want you to do, that last page right before the calendar says, what is my next right step? And so I want you to write down on there exactly what your step is. And then why is that step so important? Because if you always know the why, that helps you to really actually execute on that instead of it being something Carolyn told you sometime that sounded like a good idea. And then pick a date. When are you going to do this by? And again, you want small. So I'm working on the next chapter, or I'm going to write my outline, or I'm going to have an hour-long conversation with God where we talk about the vision for this book and we get that nailed down. Like literally pick a time, pencil that hour into your calendar. For those of you who put vision, I'm going to put an hour in my calendar with my Bible, with a journal, and with my ideas, and we're going to pray through this. Okay, if you figured out exactly what your next step is going to be, I want you to drop that in the comments, what your next step is going to be. Again, I want this to be a very practical session that you leave with your plan, you leave knowing what your next step is, you're ready to just keep moving forward. This isn't about deciding to do it or me convincing you that writing a book is the best move for your business. You're here because you know that that's the case. You know this is the best move for your career, for your business, for your speaking, for your ministry, and you just need to do it. Okay, while y'all are continuing to do this, I want you to lean in for a second and listen to me. When this session's over, when you close the video, your brain's going to try and talk you out of doing what you just chose to do. It's going to tell you that you don't have the time for this. It's Christmas. You have presents to buy. You have parties to attend. You have, worship services to go to that are triple the normal worship service list. Or In Shanice's case, worship services to lead that are triple the number that are normally in the season. So you are going to be told by your brain, because its job is to protect you, and sometimes it protects you against the things that you should be doing. This, you don't need to do this. This is called resistance, and it is normal. And if you are writing these books, as you all are, for God, the enemy is going to add on top of that. He's going to see you start heading that direction and go, yes, let me add on all of the reasons. Because if he can distract you from doing what God has told you to do, that's what that he's won. He doesn't have to get you not to do. All he has to do is distract you. He didn't have to tell you not to do it. He just needs to put something else over here, more interesting or more pressing or more urgent. As long as you know that that is normal and you continue to remind yourself of the why, that's why I made you write down your why, you'll keep coming back to it. It's also why it is so important to have that accountability group built in, whether that's the Christian Writers Arise Academy, your family and friends, a local author support group, whatever that looks like for you. Having that accountability so that you have other writers that you can go to is going to be key. All right. Emmy says first draft finished, parts fully together, starting to find beta readers. Excellent, excellent. These are the things, I love seeing this all in the chat. Sherry's got hers in the chat. Shanice has got hers in the chat. Excellent, excellent. Perfect. Okay, because this is the fact. Okay, this is the truth. You're no longer someone thinking about writing a book. You're someone with a plan. You're someone with a next step. You are not an aspiring author. I want you to hear me clearly. You are not an aspiring author. You are an author who is at a specific stage in the writing process. You may not have a book published yet, but that's not what makes someone an author. What makes someone an author is God calling them to be one, because that's what a calling is. He's naming you. That's right, Amanda. Say it loud. I am an author. I want you all to own that identity this morning, because that is the truth. That's why we call it a calling, because God is naming you. So if he has called you to write, he is calling you an author. And so you are. So you just own that identity. I am an author. On authority from God. Yes, ma'am, Sherry, on authority from God. And as I tell my authors all the time in Christian Writers Rise, if God has called us this, nobody else can say anything else. Because who has more authority? Nobody. Nobody has more authority. So if the creator, king, lord of the entire universe says that this is who we are, people can say whatever they want, but that's the truth. The truth is you are that author. Now, here's what normally happens after these sessions. We already talked about the resistance. Questions are going to pop up. Doubt is going to creep in. Life is going to get loud. And it's not because you don't have a good plan, but it's because doing it alone is hard. So I'm going to take just a few minutes and let you know about the option of joining Christian Writers Arise Academy. First of all, this is what it's like, because I have my authors here this morning too. Several of these ladies are already in the program, so they can attest. And if any of you want to attest to that in the comments, I would love it, to the amount of support. Sherry's beginning today. Yes, we are so excited about that. To the amount of support and things that you get inside of this, because it's not for people who might write a book one day. It's for people who are actually doing it, and they know that they want Holy Spirit-led support as they walk out this path. That's who it's actually for. Because inside the academy, your momentum is going to stay strong. Strategic weekly coaching. Nicole can tell you, I don't let you run off. I go chasing you down and saying, hey, where are you? How are you doing? Is the writing going well today? Your writing will feel structured and doable, because we talk about the WRITE method, WRITE, and I walk you through the process of getting those rough drafts done for real life in real schedules. I wrote the third edition of that statistics book with an 18-month-old and an executive job where I had a team of over 100. I know how to write in the small pockets of a day, and I know how to teach you to do it too. And every phase of the process will feel intentional, supported, clear editing guidance, clear publishing guidance, always knowing what that next step is. You'll launch with authority. You'll have a plan inside of your book that is strategic so that people are drawn to you, so that you're opening up the doors for more speaking gigs, more pre-sold clients, more people in your ministry as it grows. And there is constant accountability and encouragement and prayer for each other as we move forward. So you don't have to have everything figured out to join. You just need to be serious about finishing your book. That's it. You don't have to have a outline yet. You don't have to have a full draft. You just need to know I am serious about finishing. So if you want to release your book with less stress, clear direction, and confidence that's set up for real success, not buried by Amazon's algorithm, then I would invite you to join that, because this is where your plan will become actual progress, because this is the year your book gets finished, and I don't want you to do it alone. I'd be honored to walk with you. So as we begin closing out, I would love to hear in the comments how much progress you have made this morning. How is your plan looking? Do you feel like this was a worthwhile hour of your time this morning? Do you feel like you actually got some work done towards your book this morning? I would love to hear in the comments how everybody did this morning. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm so grateful for you. And I look forward to seeing how each of your books progresses over this next year. I cannot wait for you to get it written.